Everybody okay? Can everybody see my screen at the moment? Yeah?
The same again, the little 4 arrows in the corner, click that on the presentation and you'll get that.
So welcome to Branding Tips and Tricks for Small Businesses. Now, the way I've done this, this is I've made it as a PDF, so if there's anything you miss, anything you want, or if you want a copy of it, anything you're not sure of, I'm going to send a copy of this to Fiona anyway, or you can contact me direct, I'll send it to you. So let's start. So who am I? I am Mike Melvin, and that's me in the bottom left. And that was me when I was 8 years old on Christmas Day. Now, I've been called a cowboy many times, and I think this is empirical evidence that, well, it could possibly be true. Daylight robbery, I'd describe myself as, honestly. No. So business is Melvin Creative. It's been running for almost 18 years. I've had spent 30 years in the creative industry. So in that time, I used to kind of art direct and direct TV ads for companies like Pound Stretcher, What Everyone Wants, write radio scripts, produce branding, of course, work with all sorts of companies up and down the kind of UK. These are the kind of companies that I've worked with, and this is a tiny little selection. You all have seen at least one of these brands before, I would hope. See, this is a career that's gone on for 30 years. So I've worked with kind of companies like Marks and Spencer's, I've worked with Celtic and Rangers, quite interesting, different takes on stuff. Burger in Glasgow and Edinburgh, Canongate Books, Brodie's Restaurants, Family Mediation, Fells Hill, Scotland's oldest confectioners. So I've got a really wide breadth of work. And the work that I do for them is right across the board. So a lot of it's kind of branding, a lot of it's working with our current brand guidelines. There is no limit to what can I get asked to do because it's a creative service. So what is branding? Well, we all kind of roughly know what branding is. Branding started off when people would brand cattle, just to raise awareness that this is my property, get your hands off. And it's developed through the ages to something we all know is kind of branding, which encapsulates all the different aspects of your business. So that can be your advertising, your customer service, your promotional merchandise, your reputation, and your logo. But your logo isn't necessarily your branding. Your logo is part of your brand. Okay. What's in a name? Now, this is the one thing, all things quite kind of funny, the names of businesses. If you're kind of going through the process of setting up another business, try not to be too literal or service specific because things change. A year ago, you would never have thought you were in this situation now, and loads of people have set up second businesses. Companies change what their services are over the time. So within five years' time or 10 years from now, you might be offering a different service from the one you started with. And if you made your company name on that initial service, you're kind of losing a lot of business because you're not telling people actually what you do. Now, there's a company called waterforhealth.co.uk I pitched for, and the guy started off selling water coolers and filters to different companies and to homeowners. He makes about 80% of his profit now from nutritional supplements. And he's really stuck because he chose Water for Health. And he's in that kind of position that he wanted to change his name. And there are ways of doing it so he didn't lose his kind of website and didn't lose the traction. But he loses so much money of potentially what he could make because people see the name and don't think he actually sells what he's actually selling. So it's important to have a name that could be possibly just anything, but don't hang everything on it if you don't think that's the service you're going to be selling. So define your brand. Well, what is it? From a graphic design point of view, I get clients who ask me to help them, and sometimes they don't actually know what they are or what they do. And it's really difficult to pinpoint a direction to take if they don't know their kind of brand and what they are. So therefore, little kind of simple questions. What's your company mission? What are your features, products and services? What do customers already think of your company? And what qualities do you associate with? If you start to get those things together, you start to define actually what your business is and what your brand is. And if you're doing stuff for yourself and you're going to create your own brand, which people can do, you need to answer those questions. You need to know what they are because they're the fundamentals. Okay. So your logo. Okay. 5 do's. Will people immediately know what your business does? Is it simple and memorable? Is it versatile? Is it unique? Does it appeal to your target audience? Now, I've put at the bottom, you can actually create your own free logo online through things like Canva and Hatchels, Shopify.com. There's no reason why you can't create your own logo if you follow your own kind of branding guidelines. But if you are, keep it simple, okay? And again, what will people immediately know what your business does? Well, I've got a bit of a kind of issue with this, because I don't think people necessarily need to know what your business does from the off. You can have an abstract name, you can have any kind of name. Your strapline can really explain what you do, and I'll come to that in a minute. So your logo itself isn't the most important part of your kind of business. It's just a wee ident. Some people get kind of hung up on kind of logos. Now, I'll go into 5 don'ts. Right? Don't go down the route of a cliche. Now, if I see one more networking logo with people holding hands. So recently I've been working on the EEC rebrand, and there was a divide of people who liked it, people who didn't like it, people who were completely indifferent. One of the comments from one of the members was that they preferred the old logo, but when asked about it, couldn't actually remember what the old logo looked like. So I think sometimes we get emotionally connected to a logo in a business when it's actually, I'll be honest about it, it's not, again, the most important part of your business. If it's not working for you, get rid of it. If it's out of date, get rid of it. Logos are just like any kind of, if your car's worn out, if your sofa's worn out, don't be hung on it, and don't fall in love with it for a while. But if a relationship's not working, move on to something else. So these are just like 5 little kind of don'ts. Don't follow your competition. The amount of people I've had over the years who said, I want a logo like that, and it's identical to another kind of company they're in competition with, are very similar. Don't do it. You would be surprised. You might seem kind of obvious, but you'd be amazed how many people don't know what direction to go in. So the first thing they do is go, what's such and such doing? And then they kind of copy it, or they want to, very similar kind of colours and very things. It just makes you look weak because you've not got your own identity, and it makes you just, I think it kind of cheapens what your brand is. And you could be a far better company than the other one. So try and keep it your own unique ideas. And again, if you follow the 5 brand things that define who and what you are and what your business is, that really can help you. Now, and a little aside, and this is a bugbear, I'm sure Stuart Aitken gets the same thing as well. If somebody creates your logo, ask them to give it to you in multiple formats. That's formats for print, one's with Pantone, one is for online, because they're all different kind of formats. The amount of times I've had to redraw somebody's logo because they only ask for it for the web, and the quality is really bad, and then I have to spend time, which I'm going to charge you for, so save yourself some money. And it doesn't take a graphic designer any time, because once a logo is designed, you can export it in multiple formats. So that's just a little tip and trick to save me time. And Stuart. Now, colour. This is one of the big things that really throws clients. All the time I've been kind of doing network and online network, I'm amazed at night at houses you see where it's kind of magnolia kind of rooms are kind of really kind of white. And I get that. It's kind of neutral kind of colour and everything can go with it. People seem to be quite scared of colour. So when companies do use colour, it can be such a big impact. It can really completely change your perception of a company. But a lot of clients don't know how to use colour. Or they've had a logo designed for them, which is maybe 1 or 2 colours. They don't know how to use it. They want to they're bored of using the same colours. So they want to use another one. They want to use a third colour, tertiary colour. How do you do it without actually knowing what you're doing? Well, Adobe has the answer. So Adobe Colour Wheel, which is on the screen at the moment, you can upload a picture, select a colour. It will tell you the breakdown of that colour, but also give you a breakdown of complementary colours that go with that. So as I said, for example, Badil's logo might be blue and red. Badil wants to have another colour on her app. Not sure of it. Puts in both colours and it'll give you, I said, complementary colours, or ones that are kind of contrasty, or ones that are sympathetic or pastel versions. It's all here. It's a fantastic, amazing tool to use. It's got accessibility tools as well, which is fantastic. So it means if you're presenting a document to everybody can read it. It has access to that document. Now, I've been using this recently because I'm doing a range of vegan ready meal packaging, and the client wanted pastel colours. And I wanted to I had a fair idea of the kind of colours in my head, but I wanted to just clarify it. So I put the colours into, or uploaded the images of the kind of colours they'd found, and it gave you a range of colours that work with that. So I can then go back to the client saying, here's your options. What do you think? And it's like, I'll take A and B. I'll take that one. And it meant the client was involved as well. But we know they work because, not that Adobe are the colour the colour experts. They really do know their stuff. So that's a great one for anything really. Colour also is a tip. If you're doing a document or a brochure and you're sending it to somebody, I've seen so many kind of Word documents where it's just a wee bit of text and it's quite sparse. Big blocks of colour. Chuck a big block of colour in it. You can't go wrong, especially the brighter the better, because what happens is it doesn't confuse the brain, but it tells the brain there's a lot on the page. So if you don't have a lot of content, but you want to kind of make it more impactful, put a big block of colour behind it, or make the first paragraph of that text big and colourful, because it really tells the brain there's something happening there. Because colour's one of these things that it just does that. It just helps to fill up the void in a page and fills up a void in your brain. So colour is one of the most important things. I love colour. I use it all the time. All my business to colour. Here you go. So this is the psychologist's view of colour, which again, I'm a bit kind of dubious about. It just gives you a kind of little breakdown of what colours are meant to signify. And we know that, you know, yellow is positivity and black is prestige, kind of things like that. Again, don't get too hung up on things like this on the colour, because I had a lively discussion with a client a wee while back, and we were talking about red, and the client was was saying, well, red, it's a really bad colour, and it's a colour of blood. And I was like, well, it's also the colours that kind of Coca-Cola use, and you know, all these kind of other kind of companies use. And she went, no, it just got back and forth. And her final parting comment was, well, you know, red, it's the colour of the red light district. And I catch completely through me, because I thought, I'm not quite sure where she's going with this, but it got to the point. I was like, okay, why don't we use something like orange then? And it was all fine. So again, red, sometimes people can put strange emphasis on it, but here's a wee kind of breakdown of what the psychologists say, and who am I to disagree? Fonts. Fonts, people tend to use the system fonts they get in their Mac and their PC, and they're a bit scared of kind of using fonts, and they're not sure where to get them or how much they cost, or if they've got to have a license. One of the best places you can go for fonts is Google. So Google have a massive range of free fonts, and they're always adding to them. So if you download them, they're free. You can use them on your for print and on your website. So they provide them both as web fonts and kind of true type fonts or open type fonts. It means that you've got consistency in your brand. So if you've got a website using particular fonts and they're Google fonts, if you then have a printed brochure, you can use the same fonts, so everything matches up. So it makes your brand stronger. It makes your identity stronger. Everything hangs together better. There is no excuse for using the system fonts in your Mac or PC. And if you do, take yourself off, stand in the corner of the room and have a word with yourself, because there is no reason. So there's thousands of free fonts. But it's not just Google. There's ones like Font Squirrel and DaFont or DA Font and Font Fabric. There's thousands of companies who provide you with fonts. So you've got your fonts, Steve. What the font should I do now? Nuts. Bear with me. So even if you start to download your Google fonts and you're not sure of what works or what doesn't work in kind of combination, you can go to some company like, or a website like fontpair.co. They work only with Google fonts, and they'll give you hundreds of combinations of fonts. So you can have a serif font, and a serif font is the little fonts. They've got the little edges that come off the little tags. So like the Times newspaper uses Times, and you'll always see the Times font. It's got the little bits that hang off the edges. And sans serif are kind of your modern fonts, or your ones with clean edges. They're quite simple. So how it tends to work is sans serif and sans serif don't really work together. Serif and serif don't really work together unless they're completely different. So this is a fantastic, again, free online. We can go in and you can choose different fonts, and you can actually see roughly how it's going to work in your branding or in your website, or however you use it. And as we pick, they're just showing two fonts, Playfair and Source Sans together, and how that works. Again, it's a fantastic, it's a no-brainer. It takes a lot of the work out of trying to work out fonts and what's right and what's wrong, especially if you're not confident in it. What is a tagline? Well, we all know what a tagline is. It's a little description that succinctly and clearly communicates the brand message. So again, there's a pretty process in here. If you can work out what your company is and who you are, and what your kind of whole ethos is, write it down in 2 or 3 sentences describing your business, and then cut it down and keep cutting it down until you get 3 or 4 kind of words or phrases. And that's roughly your kind of tagline, or a tagline. Again, there's no kind of specific rules on it. You can have quite vague taglines. You can have ones which are kind of like, we are the best. One sometimes I use is Melvin Creative stand out from the crowd. It's just little kind of things that help. Now, the good thing about kind of taglines is if you've invested in a logo and you like your logo, and I was going back to earlier on, and you're going to change your service, if you get a tagline and your service is, and your logo is a generic name, but your tagline is about the service and you're changing it, you can change your tagline. So if you're saying Melvin Creative, stand out from the crowd, and I suddenly decide, you know what, Melvin Creative, I've fed up with doing all this work for ungrateful clients. I'm going to start a pub. I'm going to call it the Melvin Creative Pub, and it's only for graphic designers and creative people. So Stuart, you can come, and Angela, and all creative people can come. But let's not make it stand out from the crowd. I don't want to lose my Melvin Creative. I'll delete the stand out from the crowd, and I'll call it Melvin Creative Pub for Creatives. So you've still got your logo, it's just a tagline that's changed. And it can save you a fortune. So this is from courtesy of Paula Wingate, my very good friend Paula Wingate, who we had a wee chat earlier, well, a few weeks ago. And she was telling me about this astonishing fact that the Just Do It campaign for Nike, which is now their kind of tagline, raised their worldwide sales, they think, from $877 million to $9.2 billion, the tagline, because it just caught the imagination. So it does really pay to have a kind of tagline or something there that can just, is just catch people's imagination, or is positive, or it just sums up your business. Brand guidelines. Now, Steve Gaston and I spoke about this a wee while back. I've lost count of the amount of companies who spent a fortune getting branding. They've got their logo, they've got everything, and if they've paid the design company or the creative company to provide brand guidelines. And these brand guidelines are usually just little kind of PDF or printed documents that tell you as you can see, the colours, the support colours, the fonts, the pictures you use, the style of pictures, the tone of language, the promotional items, how logos sit on them, what kind of promotional items. I have met so many companies who get this done and then they never look at it again. And a lot of time I've gone in and I've asked people for, I started doing work, and then halfway through the job they go, we found this, and it's their actual brand guidelines, which would have been handy at the start, but when you look through it, it's quite comprehensive, it's quite kind of clever, and it cuts out a lot of work for them and for me. But I always find it strange that companies don't really adhere to it. It's like, a recipe book. You wouldn't go and open up a recipe book and then go, I'm going to make this, and then cut out half the ingredients and just I'm just going to make it one way. So brand guidelines are really good to keep your brand on track, because if you don't use it and you start to get a bigger company, then what tends to happen, and again, this is another kind of thing I've noticed over the years, companies get a brand guideline, they've got 5 employees, then they get 7, then they get 10, they get 15, and jobs start to get devolved off to different people. So you get one person who's doing a little leaflet, one person who's doing social media, one person who's doing the corporate, corporate management, all these different kind of roles, and a lot of them create their own documents, they create their own, mini brand as they go on, things that they like themselves. But when you put it all together, it doesn't hang. It just looks like a bag of washing that's put together, and it looks weak, and it doesn't sell your brand. So if you're getting brand guidelines, and even for yourself, take a note of all the colours you use, take a note of the fonts so you're consistent, because consistency is one of the most important things you can have in brand guidelines. And I'll come back, I'll go on to that in a second. Writing rules. Now, this is, again, with the explosion of social media in the past few years, the writing rules aren't something that a lot of kind of companies pay attention to, but you should. The reason being, if you use a certain kind of tone of language in all your kind of your website, your social media, and your written content, on every kind of aspect where you're kind of writing something, it should kind of hang together. It should feel that it's coming from the same company and it's coming from the same voice. You're talking to. It's like it's like walking into a pub and you've taken helium. If you're not talking in the right voice, you need to speak in the right voice to your kind of consumers, because if you don't, it's off and you kind of lose part of your kind of focus. And emojis as well. If you're going to go down the route of having kind of written rules, try and work out what your emojis are going to be and stick to them, or the combinations of them. Again, it's familiarity. People start to understand who you are. And the great thing about having writing rules, again, if your company starts to get bigger, and there's somebody doing social media, and there's somebody doing looking at writing blogs, and there's somebody doing kind of proposals, if you kind of have a kind of writing rules in your brand guidelines. It gives everybody the same sort of idea of the kind of language to use and the tone, how familiar you are, how friendly you are, what the kind of conversation is. Okay. Now, stock photography. We all love stock photography, don't we? Angela Day mentioned a wee while back that I believe that Google are now starting to mark down websites that just use stock photography. I don't know if that means just in its raw format, or they'll give you a bit of kind of creative license if you kind of colour the images. The best thing about if you can is get real photography. Absolutely, 100%. And there's a few photographers in the group. Angela's one of them who she knows what she's doing. If you're using stock photography, use it with caution. I don't want to see a picture of the Bahamas and somebody saying, in a brochure for Largs. I don't want to see, like, the picture at the top right, this kind of fantastic white family smiling, perfect kind of teeth when it's meant to be a housing association in Castlemilk. You kind of start to lose your audience if you don't have images that are relatable. And it looks fake and it looks fraudulent. If I go to a website and the pictures are clearly, not from that area or that kind of location, I do kind of start to think, well, what else are they not telling the truth about? So if you are going to use stock photography, try and do something a bit different with them so that they're part of your brand. Now, the pictures on the right are for an organisation I've been working with for years and years and years. And I've gone through their branding. I'm doing loads of leaflets and posters and their annual report. And they have a conference, or they used to have a conference every year. Big organisation. So all the images for them, sometimes they get photography done, sometimes they don't. So what I'll do is I'll take a stock image and I'll use their primary colour, which is the purple, in that image. So at least when it's used, you can see that it ties everything together, that all the leaflets side by side look part of the same family. Now, the work for them came about from a few years ago when they went to a conference and they had all their literature on the couple of tables or the exhibition stand they were at. And some of them were designed by me and some were designed by people in-house who had their own little departments. Everything looked completely different. Some of the leaflets were A5, some were A4, some were trifold, some were stapled together, some were full colour, some were black and white. It looked like a mess. And the client was really embarrassed because the conference cost a lot of money. And the stand next to them was not a rival, but somebody in the same arena. And their work looked fantastic by comparison, with everything hung together. And what they noticed was that people in the table next were picking up every leaflet because they looked good. Now, as Badil says, maybe 8% of business cards and leaflets get chucked away. It doesn't matter. It's the 20% who keep that are the ones you want. But the company, the organisation who I won't name, didn't even get. People were picking up one leaflet, looking at it, and then going and putting it back down on the table. And they're quite annoyed, and it's kind of obvious thing, keep everything tied together. But it wasn't until they saw the comparison to the next to them they thought, we've got to do something here, and that's how I get involved. But they've learned the lesson, so keep everything consistent. So rebrand, see when you do a brand, if you're doing stuff yourself and you want to kind of thinking about it, don't be afraid to change it. Never be afraid to change your brand. The biggest brands in the world constantly tweak and change and change. I mean, if you look at the Apple logo from years ago, they kept the same shape, but the Apple logo from years and years ago was like the little kind of rainbow. And now I think it's just down to white or grey, whatever it is. All the companies change. There's very few who keep, like, maybe you might have a Tunnocks tea cake, where Tunnocks haven't really changed their brand because they don't really need to. They've only got 2 or 3 products and it works for them. So they don't really need to. But with everybody else who maybe 10, 20, 30 years in a kind of business, don't be afraid to change it because you don't want to get lost in time. You don't want your brand to look out of date. So it's nice to kind of tweak things and change things and just keep yourself relevant. So the most important thing, I think, in the 30 years of working with companies on their branding is consistency. See even if your logo is not very good and your fonts are terrible, at least keep them all consistent across all your material. It looks stronger. It looks weak when you have 10 people producing or having a nice logo and then they squash it, they stretch it, they grab, they can't find the logo, so they grab it off the internet and it's tiny and pixely. keep it consistent. Obviously, it's your own advantage to make your brand as powerful and as spectacular as it possibly can be, but keep it consistent. Because if you don't, what's the point of having it? It's just a waste. So, having said all that, now I'm not Mr. kind of rules and stuff like that. The rules are there to be broken. Some of the most fantastic campaigns and fantastic businesses have started out because people have gone, they've completely ignored the rules and they go down their own route. And it can work. A lot of times it doesn't. But if you understand the basics of your business, like your branding, what you're doing and why, and you understand how fonts and works colours, then you can break lots of rules within the kind of creative industry. If you get the things like colour rate and say the combinations of fonts and serif and sans serif and how that works, you can break everything else, because it's an industry where rules are always being broken. So don't think that you've got brand lines, you have to kind of just work with certain things. You don't. You can change, make your own rules and change things. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. It's the first one I've done in about 20 years. Yeah, never again. I'm not doing that again. So anyway, that's it. I shall pass you back to Fiona. Any questions, I am happy to answer. Thank you.